Well, now to our interview, and despite growing US opposition to the war in Iraq, the troop surge in Baghdad continues. Today, the commander of American forces in Iraq has recommended that heightened troop levels be maintained for at least another year. Meanwhile, the American public has been asking exactly how things went so wrong. Well, the story of one individual soldier can only provide clues rather than answers, but Joshua Key's book, The Deserter's Tale, still makes for sobering reading. The book details basic training techniques in which, if the author is to be believed, Iraqis, Afghanis and all Muslims, in fact, are systematically demonised. Key was just a private soldier, but he examines his own reactions to Iraqi civilians and those of his fellow soldiers during his tour of duty, and concludes that American soldiers were behaving like terrorists. It's a staggering conclusion, and we should bear in mind that Joshua Key is still seeking asylum in Canada, having deserted the army rather than return to Iraq. Well, it's impossible for us to verify key elements of his account, but you can judge his authenticity for yourself. I spoke to him in Toronto earlier today. Joshua Key, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Why did you get involved in writing this book in the first place?
I would say for the main purpose of it was to get my story out, for it to be heard, and for everyone to hear it.
You know, I'm sure, what the consequences will be. Some people will regard you as a hero, but your critics are going to say that you're a traitor.
Well, of course, you're going to have that anyways, of course. I look at that, I'm not a coward, or nor am I a traitor. I went and fought for my country. The only reason I left, of course, was the things I witnessed, and that's what I made my decision on. And to me, it was a moral decision, and so I don't believe myself in being that.
We'll talk about some of the details in a moment, but first let me take you back to your account of basic training, because it's here you argue that your minds were poisoned. Could you describe it to us, just how you were taught, what people were saying to you about Iraqis and Muslims?
You know, that of course, they were never called Iraqis or Muslims. You know, they were always used in derogatory terms as Hajis, Habibs, and so on. I would say that it was definitely for a dehumanizing. I mean, if you see something, you hear it in that effect all the time. I mean, they were never referred to as civilians or Iraqis or Muslims.
You say of the training that you were told that all Muslims were terrorists, that all Muslims were responsible for September 11. Were people actually saying that to you specifically?
You know, yes, and then I got it to the term that, you know, it's instead of being what would you say, not guilty until proven, until proven guilty, I would say that, you know, to us it was they're guilty until proven innocent. And to us, all Muslims were terrorists. That's the way that we were taught, and that's the way we conducted our business.
You say it's the way you conducted business. Did you actually see soldiers in Iraq behaving as if they actually believed this?
Oh, very much so, very much so. I mean, it was, you know, even in our actions, from raiding homes to traffic control points to from everyday, I would say, maneuvers in Iraq. I mean, it was very systematic. You know, it was never referred as civilians or people. I mean, it was always, you know, derogatory terms, always something, always to dehumanize them, to put them beneath us.
Did you see or feel this in your own behavior?
Of course, in my own behavior at first, I would know I seen it and I did it. I mean, you know, of course I changed after the months went, but no, at first I was one of them. So, I mean, that's, yes.
Did you abuse Iraqi civilians yourself?
Yes, I did, yes.
Now, of the numerous raids and other incidents that you participated in, you've written, "It struck me that the American soldiers themselves were the terrorists." Now, people back home, your own family, are going to be horrified to hear you say that.
Well, I'm sure they will be. You know, but the way I look at that was the truth. You know, we had no justification after all them homes that I raided. There was no justification. You know, I felt that we was more antagonizing, causing it, you know, into my picture, to myself. You know, we had become the terrorists. I wasn't getting terrorized. I was more of doing the terrorizing.
In what regard? What do you mean by that?
You know, from raiding a home, taking the sons and their husbands, you know, if they're over 5 foot tall, they were sent off, regardless if anything was found in that house or not. Through Every day, night raids, of course, illumination rounds through the rounds all night long, complete patrolling of the streets nonstop. It was more of antagonizing. We weren't, when we would go out on a patrol, it's not that we were, you know, saying derogatory names even to the Iraqi women. I mean, it was, we antagonized. We brought it, we made it the way it was.
Now, you were in some of the worst fighting in Fallujah, and you claim to have seen at least 14 civilians killed. Can you tell us about the circumstances?
For one of the incidences, it was we were at a mayor's cell, which is sort of where you're, I guess you would say, like the mayor of the city stayed. I was on the back part. I wasn't at the front, so I didn't see the exact action. But of course, I seen the after effect of it, and that was, of course, the ground was, you know, outrageous amount of gunfire. Of course, we was getting ready ourselves. It came over the radio that. You know, that something in the front was happening. I guess the overall circumstances of it was, at the end result was, 12 Iraqi civilians were killed. The reason why is because somebody had gotten trigger happy. And that was one of my first incidences with death there, of course, is that. And, I mean, it was apparent very, the first day we got into Iraq, that if you felt threatened, you shoot. You ask questions later. You know, our actions were completely unsupervised, and we did as we will. And just as well as them 12 Iraqis, there was no reason for them to be dead. I mean, somebody got trigger happy, there's death.
When civilians were killed, what happened? Did your officers make reports? Did they try and investigate what had happened?
I myself never got questioned. In the course of my ranking, I had no idea what my commanding officers were doing, if anything was wrote or not. I know on many of the circumstances that I witnessed myself in Iraq, I asked later on if any mission statements have been written. You know, have anything been written about what happened last night? And I was told on many occasions that it was none of my concern and none of my business.